thank you for joining us today for the VRARA Mumbai chapter's 5th session. And we at Tesseract, the VRARA Mumbai chapter leaders, we are committed to inspire, educate, and create a robust networking platform for people and businesses who are bringing the transformation with the power of XR. Stories have the power to charm and influence and even change our behavior. The way we remember the most of our favorite brands is, it's about their stories, basically how that made us feel. Online audiences are immersed today in a sea of digital media, and where other platforms and other form of contents are always competing for our attention. As innovation and technology improve and evolve, storytelling will continue to become more immersive and powerful. Our today's session is going to explore the most critical aspect of AR and VR experience creation and how storytelling on XR platforms can help you build experiences that would grow, a delight for audiences and also help you and create a more robust experience for your consumers. To take a deep dive on this topic, we have today with us our very own Mr. Pradeep Khanna, and the CEO of Global Mindset, the Executive Director APAC for VRARA. He is an IIT Delhi alumni and a great mentor to us. Many, not only to us, but also for the many leading XR brands and spaces around the world. He will be in conversation with Mr. Saurabh Sameer. You can always call him Sameer, that we just clarified some time ago. He's the Director Strategy and Business from Customer Technologies. Saurabh started his journey as a visual effect artist in 2005 with Maya Entertainment. He worked on many interesting projects. He worked on movies like Rising, Mangal Pandey, Bhutnath, Three Idiots, like that. He co-founded Custom Technologies in 2013 and he headed creatives for a while. Then gradually he progressed to lead the strategy side of the business. I would like to welcome Pradeep sir and Sameer to begin the session.
Thank you very much, Priyanka. As always, it is a great pleasure to have a session which is, organized and kick-started by you. Folks, this is Pradeep from Sydney. Sameer, it is a pleasure to be here with you, chatting with you. I think the interesting bit about today is storytelling. Now, the word storytelling, what it conveys essentially is telling stories. But why is telling stories important in this brave new world? Well, for a starter, can you guess what is our attention span? And if I was, in a face to face audience and I was asking this question and I was in Sydney, I would have possibly offered wine bottles, as I always used to do in my face to face sessions, as prizes. But considering that we are in an online session today, let me tell you that our attention span is 8 seconds. Now, in a world where our attention span is 8 seconds, engagement is the key. It's all about engagement, experience. And when we talk about engagement, and as Priyanka mentioned, let me kind of give you another perspective. Let me say that I was talking to you about, nursery rhyme that Jack and Jill went up the hill. Now, if I simply said the word Jack and Jill went up the hill, you would listen to me and half concentrated, or it would just drop off your mind. Next, if I showed you a picture where there is a hill and there is some character of Jack and Jill climbing up the hill, yeah, you would be slightly more interested. Next, if I showed you a video where Jack and Jill are climbing up, you would be slightly more interested. But now let's take another aspect. Let's say that you are in immersive technology and it gives you the feeling of that you are in self interacting with Jack or Jill, or you yourself are climbing up a tree. Would that be more engaging? I don't know. Let's ask Sameer. So, Sameer, first of all, tell me, what is storytelling?
Thank you, Pradeep. Thank you for that wonderful prelude to this session. Storytelling, see, it's akin to memories. All the audience here, we tend to remember the experiences that we have. You may take down notes, you may take down any pointers, but you're likely to forget them. You remember memories. Storytelling is an art. It's explaining in visual format, in pictorial format, things that are experiencing, things that are happening around you. So whatever we do, we need to capture the memory of the audience. Whatever experience that he is imbibing, he's going through, has to stay with him. That is a very key element of any exercise or any medium that we do. And in XR, it takes far more importance because we are giving the control to the user. He is my hero. In a normal storytelling, how it happens is we have a protagonist and we see the story. In XR or immersive media, we become the hero. We become the actual person who's experiencing thing. So the more we interact, the more we engage with thing, more we give our reactions to the things that are happening, more I get engaged and more I remember. And that's
So,
how this.
so you are
Yeah, please.
saying that it is not just about engagement, it is also, you know, interaction, but it is
Absolutely.
also retention.
Absolutely. Retention and the emotional part. We need to have our audience emote. That's how they'll then relate to the content. So technology is secondary. The emotional and engagement part takes precedent.
So you have been involved in, should I say, film production or should I say VFX, or in creative industries for quite some time.
Yeah.
Now, did you kind of start? Why did you decide to join, creative industries first of
So
all?
I had this inclination from the very beginning. I was good at arts. That was the first thing that pushed me into the creative fields. While I was good at drawing from since very beginning, at very tender age, you can say. So I was always fascinated with drawing pictures, and that's what got me into areas where I can explore this art and animation. At that time, this is I'm talking 2001 and 2. It was just starting to boom in Indian diaspora. So people were just realizing what animation is. I still remember it was hard time explaining to my parents what I wanted to do because they wanted me to be a doctor. And
That is that is exactly the point because
Yeah,
you see, I mean, the typical mind is that the kids should go become a doctor, engineer, or something like that. I mean, going into creative arts is like, oh my God, what is this guy
yeah,
doing?
yeah,
Hmm,
yeah. Yeah.
hmm. And
So I
also,
happened to be in Delhi at that time, and I had visited a seminar on animation that was happening career, and that's if I don't know whether people here remember there was a series called Captain Vyom that used to come, which Milind Soman was the main lead in. It was first India sci-fi series at that time, and we had been shown promos of that, and that's what caught my attention, and I enrolled in the animation and VFX school in Delhi, MAC, which was the premier institution at that time and still is, I believe. And I did very well. Please
so,
go ahead.
so I heard Priyanka say that you were also working with Maya Studios. Now, Maya has
Yeah.
been one of very, very icons,
Yes,
both
absolutely.
in terms of the kind of production they have done, but they've also became a global powerhouse in terms of, center for outsourcing for big studios worldwide.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
what have been some of the stuff that you've been involved in?
So I joined Maya in 2004 February, I guess. That was the time that I had joined Maya. And my first foray into this world of visual effect was a series called Sonpari that used to come. That's how we started. And then the big movie, the first movie that I did was Mangal Pandey Rising as a compositor. And that's how the career then started. Films after films, I keep on learning, kept on learning. There was visual effects in ad space also that we dabbled in. So those were the very fun times. It was a great learning experience. Understanding the story element, because once you're a compositor, it becomes very key. You develop the eye for detail. You look for things that you have to do to make believe the audience that the thing that they're seeing in front of the screen is real. So
Actually,
that's
that is exactly the point that I was going to come to. Is that you see because you are in a way on the technology side. Hmm. And how do you kind of keep the focus that you see, I want to keep my audience engaged. It needs to be an engaging story. So, did you have to learn through the process or how did it happen?
So most of the learning happened on the job. At that time, the curriculum was not as elaborate as we have today. So most of our learning or people that we worked with happened on the job. As you grow in the industry, you did more and more features, you did more and more shots. You knew what is that the your eye can catch, and probably a normal eye won't catch. So you started to take example from real world. You observe things,
Got it.
how light reacts and everything.
So, the concept of storytelling as it exists today, was it also known in the same fashion way back 20 years back or 15 years back?
It was always there. It was always there. Just that it has evolved because our idea of engaging content has now evolved. So that's how storytelling has also evolved. With this new medium coming in, like storytelling format for an OTT has evolved in a different way, like we used to consume films on a bigger screen. So as the medium evolved, the storytelling aspect also evolved, but the essence in which the user was the key always remained the same. It still is.
So now we are living in a world where it is not just about content consumption but also about content creation.
Creation. Yeah.
We are living in a world where there is a segment of the economy which is emerging as a creator economy. And there's a we are living in a world where there is a economy which is now developing focused onto influencers, where all of it this is about content creation as well as in engaging with audiences. So, how do you see that film production, or for that matter, the line of business you are in, is this different from content creation in, say, for example, education or storytelling, insofar as any other content creation or consumption is concerned?
So it's not very different, just that the audience are now far more intelligent. They are far more demanding now because they have been exposed to so much around the world that they understand things. So the attention span is now far more less. If the content is not engaging, they'll drop off because they have so many options to explore. So you're continuously you need to poke your audience, you need to grab their attention, lure them into going forward, explore things. So in a way it has become more challenging for the content creators. uh, but again, like I said previously, the essence of storytelling still remains core to it. If we stick to the principles, it's
So,
still there.
so tell me, why is immersive technologies making a difference insofar as, you did mention that, we are no longer the content consumer is no longer a passive consumer of
Yes.
content.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are an active player. But does that pan out both in AR as well as in VR?
See, actually, yes, but there's the major difference when it comes to both the tech, AR and VR. Now, AR is more democratic, I would say, because it's happening on your phone. With VR, you need that device. Now, that device is still a limitation with people, but AR isn't. The challenge with AR it comes is my storytelling scenario is the real world. If I use my phone, it will happen around me
So, in
wherever
other
I'm.
words, okay, so in other words, what I hear you saying is that in the case of AR storytelling, you know you are building a story just as you are in the real world, and an
Correct.
example would be the Pokemon Go.
In one go. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you're how involved you were in trying to find that out,
Right. Yeah,
whereas in
yeah.
the case of virtual reality storytelling, the whole world is a virtual world. But to that extent, games have been using, kind of virtual reality concept for donkey number of years.
Yes, yes, yes,
Hmm.
yes, yes.
So how has that evolved, in terms of storytelling, and, from where it was 15 years back to now?
So if I take the case of VR now and the storytelling, if you
Hmm.
see most of the game mechanics that were in the game industry are now being leveraged into the art of storytelling when it comes to XR, wherein we want our user, we are giving the control to the user now. He is exploring the world, he is going forward, but as a storyteller, where you have to be an expertise is you have to guide that user in the direction they where you want to lead him to. And the trick is the user shouldn't know that you are being led, because once
Got it.
he thinks that he is being manipulated, that's the drop off point. So now
Got it.
that is a challenge for the storytellers.
Got it.
Guide the user to the story that you want him to see.
So let me kind of, I've heard that you've done some very interesting work with Madam Tussauds, and you've done
Yeah.
some very, very interesting work with, people with autism, with the center which is doing that. Do you have something that you could showcase to us? Do you
Yes.
have some presentation or
Yeah.
something else that, so I'd love
Yes.
you to walk you through that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'll just share my content so that a couple of points that I briefly want to have the audience engage in and listen to it. That as a psychological back of a mind, that we tend to learn through stories. Humans are always looking to learn through stories subconsciously. So minute we put a story to any element of ours, it's going to have instant connect. What is important to remember is whom we are speaking the story to. Anytime we design any of our game, it could be VR, AR, we need to have our target audience in mind. How are they going to react to my stories? That is very important. Is the age group of a child, is my an office goer, or is a senior citizen? The audience has always be the first person that a storyteller must think of. And I quickly jump to the Madam Tussauds because I want to go through this example. Now, there's a very interesting backstory of how this whole concept was envisaged. Now, Madame Tussauds, as everybody know, is famous for its mannequins, real of real personalities and celebrities around. It's a very static environment. Now, when we did this first exercise in Singapore, the whole idea was how do we bring the element of Bollywood, which is song and dance, into this space. Now, when we explored all the tech, AR was the best suited tech for this. A large scale augmented reality setup wherein people can see themselves dancing. Now, that itself, this setup itself is has been explored and people see it. How we brought in the storytelling element in this is we gave the audience chance to choose their songs, and that's what democratized or that what empowered the user, because most of the time it happens is you are reacting to the content that is already there. Here there was a setup, a kiosk where you can, there are a list of songs you can choose, and these are all songs that have been recorded and post-production produced on the hindsight. And when the user selects these songs, then the persons or the back dancer in AR, they come up and then they dance to the tune. So similar exercise we did in Dubai, Madame Tussauds as well. And this has been very well received because now the user is present. So we always have this inbuilt desire to dance to Bollywood numbers with backstage dancers and everyone. So now that is being catered here in an immersive plan.
So let me go deeper into this, you see. Now, so in other words, there is a library of different songs which are available.
Yes,
Hmm? And but you see, when you go to Madame Tussauds, typically what happens is you got all those mannequins of famous people over there.
correct, correct.
Hmm. So how do you match? Like you choose an experience and you choose a mannequin and then do what?
No, so there's a separate gallery wherein there's a large LED that is already in place, and
Hmm.
besides that LED there is a tab which
Hmm.
shows the list of songs. So there's a dedicated zone which is called a
Hmm.
Bollywood zone, an IFA zone.
Hmm.
You walk into that zone and you have this big LED wall in front of you and a
Hmm.
kiosk with a
Hmm.
tablet
Hmm.
which shows you a list of songs. So
Hmm.
you walk up to that, you choose from the songs options available. You click on that. Minute you click on that, the song is then available on the bigger screen. You walk up to a marker, and then this is a 60-minute sequence wherein you can record the song that you're doing, and then dance to the tune. So that is the whole idea in a nutshell.
But this is so good, because this can be transported to any museum for that matter.
Yes, so that's where the next adaptation of this was in the museum that we did with in on the life story of our late Prime Minister Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Now this is an interactive museum, and we wanted to do a section wherein whatever you have learned while going through this museum could be asked with you in a fun way, in a quiz manner. So that was the intention. So now, while exploring tech and wanting to make it more immersive, we again selected this large scale augmented reality setup, and we merged the gameplay of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, Kaun Banega Crorepati, and live AR. So
So
how it
this,
happens is,
yeah, please. Yeah,
you
sure.
walk it into a room wherein there's a setup of there are four chairs, like it happens in the quiz show as well. You take your setup and you wait in front of a larger screen. And as soon as the screen starts, you can see a hologram, a digital double of Atalji sitting right in front of, in middle of you. And then there are questionnaires on the screens. So it might ask you, where was Atalji born? You have then the option, then as in the KBC format as well, you get the option in front of your in the tabs that are in front of you. You select the answer. Now, if the answer is wrong or it is correct, we then have Atalji intervene and tell you small and facts or trivia about that incident. So that's how he comes in, tells that this answer was correct, but let me tell you another fact to it, or let me tell you another nuanced story to it. And that's how the gameplay happens.
And that's fabulous. You see, I can see that there are elements of gamification also, although at a very, very
Yes,
simple level, which have been
yes,
introduced. Hmm.
yes, yes. And
So
sorry,
what
sorry.
you
Yes.
what you did over here was you combined storytelling with augmented reality, with gamification, and it was in a dedicated area with a defined library which was there.
Correct,
So
correct, correct.
this this is great from an organizational perspective, but you see the beauty of AR is that anybody can get an AR experience with simply a mobile phone and an app.
Yes, yes.
So, are there kind of, is it possible for, like, let me say that I have no idea. Can I get some kind of a AR storytelling experience um, in a very simple manner?
Yes, yes, you can. Unfortunately, I don't have examples for it, but we have been using this platform in the pharmaceutical industries, wherein we are telling stories to doctors about how medicine works. Now, how it is challenging here is attention span that we get with these doctors is very little. Again, this is of 60 seconds or 30 seconds. And using an AR is the best suited medium here, because they have the phone in their hand, which is handy. They can explore it anywhere, and it has a wow factor, memory retention element to it, wherein they when they see it happening on their desk, a thing or a human brain coming alive, I'll quickly go to brain. So like here you see. So once they see the element of brain or that cross section of a bone coming alive in front of you, which they can interact and learn how the medicine is functioning while it interacts with these elements, the retention power that they have is far more than a normal literature that they would read on a paper on a PDF format.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I'm reminded of, you see, in 2009, before the pandemic, I used to be traveling all over the world speaking at various conferences. And once I was in China at a place called Nanchang. And Nanchang is one of the hubs for XR, which is coming up in China. And after my speaking session on the last day, I was doing some touristy stuff. So
Mhm.
I asked my local guides, and they took me to a temple which was more than 1,000 years old, and it had been burned down a couple of times. So when I went to the temple, what I saw was there was a holographic display going on where they were walking through the story in terms of you could actually see holographic pictures in terms of temple burn, getting burned down
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then getting rebuilt, the foundations being laid, and then first floor and so on and so forth coming up. And I still remember that, and that is really the power of storytelling.
It's
Now,
very powerful.
in your slides, I saw somewhere over there you had mentioned about 4 P's of storytelling. What are those 4 P's?
Very good point. We'll touch upon this. The four P's of storytelling. So these are the four P's: the people, place, plot. Sorry, people, place. One second. I'm just having people, place, plot, and purpose. So these are the essentials, the four P's of storytelling. The people, uh, whom I'm speaking to, who are my people who I intend to engage with. That's a success for any storytelling that we try to tell, and irrespective of the medium that is, whether it's sex or your normal interactives, people are the important aspects here. Then comes the place where your storytelling is happening. Now with AR, sorry, this place is your live environment where you currently are in. That is the key place where the story would happen. People know their surroundings, and if a digital element comes there, then it has to match the surroundings. The story has to match to that digital element. In VR, this place becomes virtual because you cut off the audience, you take them into a place which is make believe. Now, another important example is that whoever is watching this story of yours needs to relate to that place. And I'll give you a small example also of a project that we were involved in with doctors again, with surgeons to specifically. Now, the whole VR exercise has to happen in a clinic. So the first round of the element, the asset that we prepared was of a very posh clinic where the surgeon would operate and interact with the digital twin of the machine. Now the feedback, and that was the right feedback that we got from the doctors, was that the place where this surgery happens is never so swanky like you have shown in the VR. So it has to be more dimly lit. It has to be more place where the surgeon, when he wears these headsets, can relate to that place. Otherwise, that connection would instantly break. So that is an important point: is the place, so that the audience knows that this wherever I'm seeing is a place that I know of. Then comes.
I No, no, that
Please,
is a
please.
beautiful point because it kind of relates to the authenticity of the story.
Correct, correct. And that is very important because we need to be authentic in our storytelling. That is where the connect with the audience would happen. Minute he thinks that this is a manipulative story, that the connect won't be there. So we have to be very privy to that fact that we need to have that instant honest connect with the audience. Then comes the plot. Now the plot is what is the plot of the story? How we are structuring it? It's a treasure hunt. It could be a treasure hunt. It could be a surgical instrument that the doctor is exploring. So that plot comes the third part, and the last is the purpose. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to say to this audience? What is the takeaway that the audience wants to take away after going through this experience? So if I'm creating a metaverse or I'm creating a VR world of say of a museum, then what is that I want to take the audience to take away from that? Do I want them to take away that, wow, they were in a make believe environment? Then I'll design it accordingly. Do I want to the takeaway to be the authenticity of the content, which they were not aware of in previous times? Then that is my purpose. So so the purpose has to be very clear in that whom what I want my audience to take away.
I love this purpose part also because you see, the purpose can be entertainment, the
Yes,
purpose can be to have a learning outcome, and
correct.
it can be, in an education environment, or it can be in a health environment, or it can be something else, or it can be simply experience. So I like this. So can we tell the audience that this is the kind of a framework they can use for typical storytelling or building a story, and then adding a layer of immersion on top of that, which
Yes,
could be
yes. So
either through
these are the things that every one of us has to remember when we are, like I said, when we're designing anything. It could be a game because storytelling is an important part of that as well. It could be an interactive, which is AR or VR. These four things has to be very clear, very clear. Then only that the app or the interactive that we are developing has a potential to succeed and connect with the audience.
a.
People, place, plot, and purpose.
So now I remember that in earlier interaction with you, you had done some great work in terms of in institution in teaching or getting learning outcomes for people with autism.
Yes.
What exactly was that? What is the story behind that?
Yeah, so this is a ZEP Rehabilitation Center in Pune with the Children's of Special Needs School. Now, the problem statement or the intention of the staff and the principal of there was using technology to help aid these children learning. Everything was very vague at that time. What do you want to do? It was just that can we leverage, because she had seen the AR museum part in the museum that we had done, and from that the story emerged that how can we leverage this technology to help in learning of this specially able children. So we sat down, we had an interactive session with them, tried to speak out the pain points of the teachers there, and how these children can be made to learn several aspects of day-to-day life. So what we then zeroed in on, while these children grow, become independent, a simple ask of crossing the road is a tedious task for them. So how do we take this example of crossing the road, and we develop a interactive application, a scenario for them wherein they see a real world environment where they're safe also, because it's a closed door environment, and they learn this basic need of theirs also. So that was then decided. And in terms of technology, then we again use projection mapping, interactive projection mapping, and your live AR. And we merge this technology for them to now go in a scenario wherein they can see all around them. There's a traffic, there's a traffic light there, the cars are moving around, and when the signals goes red, then they need to go and cross the road, so that the car will only pass after the signal has turned green. So these aspects was then built into the story. We also tried to familiarize the environment in terms of the asset that were put in, like the auto that is very frequent there. So we made an auto animation as well, so that children then can relate to that environment as well. The buses, the color of the bus, the color of the facade of the school that they are in, all were matched so that they have some visual memory and can recollect that they are in an environment that is make believe. So they know that they have seen this thing, and when they are in the real world, then they are also more relaxed and more uh, have learned this exercise previously. So that was the whole idea. And then I'll show you a small video also for people and audience here to.
झेप रिहॅबिलिटेशन सेंटर
Yes.
चिंचवडमध्ये
Yes.
आहे. स्पेशल मुलांसाठी ही संस्था काम करते. तर ऑटिझम, सेरेब्रल पल्सी, अटेन्शन डेफिसिट हायपर ॲक्टिव्ह डिसऑर्डर, लर्निंग डिसॅबिलिटी, डाऊन सिंड्रोम अशा वेगवेगळ्या प्रकारच्या, आणि ते मिक्स म्हणजे मल्टिपल डिसऑर्डर. मग त्याच्यासाठी जर आपण डिजिटल माध्यम, आता जी नवीन तंत्रज्ञान विकसित झालेलं आहे ते वापरलं तर आपली मुलं लवकर शिकू शकतात हे आमच्या लक्षात आलं. म्हणून आपण आता आभासी जग आणि रिअल लाईफ जग यांना एकत्र करून सिग्नल क्रॉसिंग हे पहिल्यांदा घेतलेले आहे. त्याच्यानंतर आपल्या डोक्यात आणखीन वेगवेगळे बरेच कन्सेप्ट आहेत जे मुलांना शिकवायचे आहेत. मुलं खूप चांगल्या प्रकारे शिकतात आहेत, म्हणजे एक 2 ते 3 दिवसात मुलांनी पिकअप केलं.
रस्ता क्रॉस करताना रस्त्याच्या डावीकडे बघावे, मग उजवीकडे बघून रस्ता क्रॉस करावे.
जे पिक्चर दाखवून आणि रस्त्यावर नेहमी त्यांना कळलं नसतं, कारण आधीच घाबरून गेली असती रस्त्यावर, मग मला येणार का, जमणार का. आणि टीचर्सना पण समोर पिक्चर दाखवून सांगायला सोपं जातंय आणि मुलं पटापट शिकतात आहे.
So this is fabulous. The question which comes to my mind is that the same learning outcome could have been achieved through VR also. Hmm. Now you
Yes,
have
yes.
two possible solution options. That one is where you showed this projection mapping in a room, and the child is interacting. The other is that the child could be wearing a head-mounted device and could be going through somewhat a similar experience. Now, what are the pros and cons of the two approaches from a cost perspective, from a learning outcome perspective, and any other perspective?
Yeah, so that's a very, very valid point of we have two options of VR and AI. So cost aside, now we need to understand our audience as well. So now these for these specially able children, um, mounting a device can sometimes be very claustrophobic for them. And also we need to understand that we have to make them walk. We need to have them have a feel that they're surrounded by a real traffic and everything. Now this is achieved in VR, but the sense of them being claustrophobic, not able to maneuver and not able to just free, because they need to at any time they need to see their teacher, they need to have that emotional connect with them, because unko lagna chahiye ki teacher is there. I'm right now not all alone in this exercise. Now, VR unfortunately doesn't provide me with that element, because once the person wears this headset, he is on its own now. He is cut off from the real world. And with the target audience in mind, minute this point came across the table, VR was not a technology that we wanted to go for. Had it been any other exercise, any other target audience or normal group of people, we might would have explored VR. But minute I knew ki these children needs to be taken care of, and we need to replicate the environment, also give them a sense of security that the known person are around.
No, you're making some excellent points, but I also want you to touch about the cost aspect. You know, how much do you think would have been a cost difference when one had taken the VR approach as compared to the AR approach?
So if the cost would definitely is higher on the AR part, because there's a projection system involved. There are projector that are projecting on the three pieces of wall. Then there's an infrastructure cost, because now you need a dedicated room as well. With VR, that infrastructure cost goes. So you are saving a lot more business money here. So the cost is definitely lower on the VR aspect, and far more in the exercise that we have done, because you need a dedicated space, plus you need an added cost of the projectors, plus the time that goes into programming. There are two sets of programming. One is the projection system, and then is your interactive programming, and they both need to speak to each other. So your programming cost altogether also goes up. But the experience that we can provide in this is far more than what a VR could have given us in this particular scenario.
I think there are some very interesting points you make, you know, and that's why it becomes important to keep in mind that who is the target audience
Correct, correct,
and
correct.
what are the outcomes that we are seeking to, and that's why that that 4P model becomes important. You see, I in couple of months back at one of the global summits, I had presented a solution by Bosch, which had been used by a municipality in Denmark to
Okay.
teach kids with autism to travel independently by public transport using VR. So at some point in time, it will be nice to compare the two options in
Yes,
terms of looking at, that how was that effective as compared to this, and how did the cost, with this kind of a thing. But really, very good, use cases. And this also reminds me that a similar use case for people with dementia. Here
hmm,
we are talking about younger audience, but there you're talking about potentially, older people.
correct,
And
correct.
somewhat similar analogy works over there. And I know that in Australia, Dimension Australia is using, but they have gone down the VR path for, making, for training of carers for people with
Yes,
dementia,
yes, yes.
as to how to get them to understand what does a person with dementia goes through.
Correct,
So
correct.
all this gets us to the point that you see how important is storytelling and how effective the storytelling become in an immersive environment.
Yes.
Now, what else would you like to tell us, Samir?
So my major or the part
मुझे
to this would be for people would be whatever story that you're designing. We need to, apart from the 4 Ps that are essentials, we need to think about these 4 points as well: comfort, presence, engagement, and emotion. Now, what is comfort? How comfortable my audience is using the tech that I've offered him, or the environment that I have prepared for him. So he has to be, the comfort factor has to be built in. That's how you decide your tech, based on the comfort of the of my target audience. Presence, how present he feel in that environment, how his brain is able to make believe him that he is in a real world scenario. He is in a scenario that is actually known to him, so that again his relation to that content that he's interacting with increases. The
No,
engagement part. Yes, Pradeep, you had something to say.
no, I love this because you see, this is a very good model to build up on the 4 Ps. You see, because four
Correct.
Ps are basically for storytelling, but these 4 elements are for emotion. So you can
Correct.
add on to them. Look at that. Yeah, back to you.
So the presence, like I said, next would be engagement. I need my audience to react. I need my audience to emote. I need my audience to engage with the content that I'm playing. Now, as a storyteller, as I mentioned as well previously also, here we are giving control to the audience. Now, storytelling in VR and XR becomes more inclusive. My audience is in control. He decides where he needs to go. But as a storyteller behind, we need to nudge him. We need to subtly guide him to the places or the path that we want him to take, so that our initial or our target message is received. An example would be I'm in a VR environment, or I'm in an XR environment of a museum, or of a very large office space. Now it is very easily for me to get lost, and I can be interactive on my own. But I want my audience to go through A, B, C, D in a series, so that the message that I have envisaged in my mind stays with him. Now I need to guide him through visual clues, to audio clues, that he now needs to move from point A now to point B, from B to C. And this everything has to happen very subtly. The audience he has to know that he's being manipulated into moving from B to C. So and of course the engagement factor has to be built in. And the last would be the immersion value, how immersed he is in this environment. Once I've achieved these four, I have a good product in my hand.
So, in other words, what we have discussed today is that how important is storytelling in the brave new world when our attention span is so low. We've also discussed that how storytelling from a content creation and content consumption process is becoming so important as more and more communities get formed and people interact with each other. We've also looked at, you see, how immersive technologies can make storytelling so effective and powerful. We've also looked at some use cases of storytelling using immersive technologies. And we've also looked at some possible options in terms of AR as well as VR storytelling. Now, considering that we are almost going to be at 45 minutes into this, any key takeaways for the audience that you would like to summarize before we open up the floor to the audience?
So my again key takeaway would be knowing your audience. If I put in the gamification element to it, everything has to be a player centric. So in gamification, we have a term called player centric design, wherein you make your game where you keep your player into focus. So that is the key element in storytelling as well. You need to keep the person whom you're telling the story to in focus, and then spin your world around it. Follow that 4P and the 4 elements that I talked about of comfort, presence, engagement, and emotions. See wherever you can inbuild those in your exercise, in your interactives, and you will certainly have a product that your audience would relate to.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Now, with that, Priyanka, would you like to open it up to the audience for any audience questions that they may have?
Sure, certainly. Thank you so much for interesting question. And there are a bit of questions that people have started to ask. So let me just go towards the top. So there's one question from Bhaskar. Could you please explain the process or guideline steps involved in conceptualizing an idea convert to consumable immersive content. In storytelling, where or how to conclude immersive technology would be the choice of medium to convey any idea. So basically, you would like to understand the step by step process if someone is getting started with it, and how would they really know which medium to use and how to convey that idea through that medium.
Yeah. Again, it's a very valid question, and it is the question that sometimes the brand also struggles with. Sometimes they only go with tech. We want to do a VR, let's do an AR. But we need to understand whenever we are ideating or anybody of us are ideating is what is that we want our story to tell. And basis on that, the tech is then envisaged or tech is then selected. Whether the story would do an AR would do a justice to it or a VR would do justice to it. The step by step process, if I come to, those are again the four principles or 4P of storytelling that we spoke about. That has to be first jotted down on a piece of paper or on a document or whatever your tool is. That needs to be thoroughly flushed out. What would be my step-by-step process pertaining to that the 4Ps that we discussed. Once we have that, my target audience in place, then we can always, it would be a very easy exercise to select whether an AR is a fit for it or a VR is a fit for this. Pradeep, anything for you to add on this?
No, I think you very much said everything, and I suppose all I would say is go back and revisit the 4P model from a storytelling perspective and add on to the 4 points, when we talk in terms of immersion, and they very much define a kind of a template for one to go on for storytelling. So back to you, Priyanka, for the next question.
All right. Thank you so much, Samir, for answering. There's one interesting question from Gaurav. How can we leverage storytelling in a non-story based virtual metaverse? Can you share some tips?
So
So,
let me answer this question, Gaurav. Gaurav, the power of storytelling is exactly that. That you see, where you make every aspect of engagement and interaction more interesting for the user or for the target audience. So, you know, that is where the power comes in. That you see, even in a non-storytelling situation, you make that more interesting. So that is what I would say. But let's also ask Samir for his comments.
So, Pradeep, you have encapsulated everything in the answer, but I'll still say there can be not anything which doesn't have a story. You have to, even if it's a non-story environment, you need to devise a story. It could be a one-liner thing. It could be a story of person going from point A to point B. But that journey has to be mapped. There has to be the pitfalls. There has to be obstacles, challenges built into that small journey of his. So nothing can be effective if it doesn't has a backing of a story. So
And let me also just take an example on that, Gaurav. Let's say that we have a very pedantic statement that a bus traveled, you are in a bus or a bus is moving from place A, let's say from Borivali to Malad. Now, this is just a statement of fact, that, okay, the bus is moving. Now, how do you make it more interesting? Well, you can make it interesting by suddenly maybe one of the tires got punctured. And then what did you do, kind of a thing? But think back of those four elements, and as Samir very rightly said, a story doesn't have to be a very long story. It can be a very short. What is the objective? The objective is the engagement. And what is the audience? You tailor made, kind of a story. So you can twist the things around. Like again, I go back to the story of Jack and Jill, the climbing up the hill. Now you can simply say that they just, walked up the hill, or they maybe tried to run on, in climbing up, and they might slipped and fell. And then what happened if they slipped and fell? But the jokes apart, these are various ways in which you can kind of, make it more engaging.
yeah,
A trivial fact itself.
yeah.
So back to you, Priyanka.
I'll just
Yeah.
add. I'll just add to this. There's another in gamification. There's a term called unnecessary obstacles. Now, why they are called unnecessary obstacles? Because in your game, in your story, you don't need those obstacles, but having those obstacles makes that journey more interesting. So, like the example of the journey with Pradeep said, a bus is going from A to B. Now, unnecessary obstacle could be just a tire puncture, like Pradeep said. Now you need to go through, do something so that the tire is again up and you again continue the journey. It could be just the conductor coming up and asking for a ticket. It could be a railway stoppage, or anything. It could be a fly that has entered through the window and you need to swat it away. So these are the human elements that you need to then feed into your story, and that's why they're called those obstacles, which you need to then make the interesting journey more interesting. So that's my concluding part to it.
I think the simplest way is I think it's needed to recall. So,
Yes.
neurons have to fire together to connect
Yes.
the dots, and if there's a story, people will recall. So
Correct.
that's a simple add on from my side. There's one more interesting question from Dhatri Pandya. Can storytelling you be used for agricultural sector, as now a lot of digitized revolutions for farmers are going on? What's your take on it? Do you have any thoughts on it, uh, Samir?
See,
How can it be used for an agricultural sector if someone is working on it?
storytelling is a key. Matlab, you cannot not use it if you want to make your product or you want to make anything interesting. So you need to have a story. And a story you have to keep in mind. I am not exposed to the field as such, but if I follow the principles, if I know my target audience, whom I am telling the story to, then I can easily weave it. If it is a story about pesticide thrower, if I say, then I have my hero element of that pesticide thrower. Now, how do I weave my story around it is entirely up to me, and then following the 4 Ps that we discussed, and the 4 elements of comfort, presence, engagement, and immersion. So I'm sure the story can be used anywhere, and agriculture is
So
no.
let me just add on to what Sameer said, Dhatre. So let me take you to, there was a Bollywood movie which came out a couple of years back, which was about, it had Lara Datta and there was some other actor, I can't remember the actor's name, and it talked about a flight which took off from, it was supposed to go from Bombay to Delhi, but somewhere in between, the flight has some mechanical problem and has to land at Jaipur. Now these people have to reach Delhi, very quickly, and they show the journey that how these people trying to go reach Delhi have to go through villages and bullock carts and all kind of agricultural artifacts. So they built around a whole story around that agriculture aspect as they were traveling around from Jaipur to Delhi, and even showcasing that in the middle of nowhere, somebody wearing a kisan or something like that had a mobile phone. So just giving aspects about, you can create a story. In fact, that is where the power lies, where the subject is a bit not that very interesting, how to make it more interesting. So back to you, Priyanka.
Thank you, Pradeep. So I think there are two similar questions. Newton, you have asked a question which is how to use BGM for storytelling. I'm assuming this is background music for
Background music.
storytelling.
Yeah.
And there's one more question which says how to use sound in XR. So I think you can merge the two and probably answer.
So sound, I think it's a very essential part. The 180 360 environment that gives you the sound could be your audio clues to look on the left, onto the right. It's a core to storytelling. Sound as it is core to any medium or any interactives or any film or anything that we developed. In XR, it gives us more options to play with because you have this 180 environment, and now you can use your clues to guide your audience. If I want to take them to the left, then the audio could be designed in a manner that I see left, or I see to the path that I intend to it. So sound is very important. Pradeep, anything to add to this?
Well, the only thing that I would add over here is that you see, today in regard to immersive experiences, the most focus is on visual, and to a certain extent on audio. But we have 5 senses. What about touch, which is haptics? What about smell? What about taste? And there is a lot of work which is going on in all of these situations, in fact. And the utopia is when you're talking about multi-sensory experience, and that's where the power of full power of storytelling comes into play when you can experience with all the five senses. It is happening, but still a couple of years away. So that's it from my side. Back to you, Priyanka.
All right. So there is one. I think it's like an open-ended question, which I would like to present to you. How much people are ready to leave the real world? What will be the impact if this transition between real and the virtual world becomes frequent? What he means to us is, are we forcefully pushing the virtual reality to people's real world?
Well, let me answer this question that is a fact. That you see, metaverse has been existing since 1992. Now, metaverse, the concept of a metaverse has been rediscovered during the pandemic by the big tech companies, especially when we were spending a lot of time in isolation on technology platforms. So there is absolutely no denying the fact that the whole concept is being pushed very strongly on the supply side, where the demand side is still, wondering, wow, what is this? Is it the next big thing, and should I jump into this, and how do I jump into this? But let me also give you another perspective, you see, and that is that there is a gaming platform called Roblox. Now, Roblox, the gaming platform, is being used by 50% or more than 50% of US American youth below the age of 50. Now, we've got a whole generation of people who are growing up. You see that Roblox, the way Roblox works is that each of the active users can also create content, and they are creating a virtual economy. You can buy and sell and all that kind of a thing. Now, if 50% of what's called as Generation Alpha, people who were born after 2010, you see, they are spending that amount of time and are using it, they are going to grow up in this. So the demographics are definitely going to pan out very strongly into this. And that's where the point of, what Sami said was in regard to augmented reality versus virtual reality will come into play. And the other thing is that it will also vary from country to country. Now, if you may have read in the papers recently that there was an Indian wedding which took place in the metaverse. Likewise, you may have read in the paper that there was a musical concert, in the metaverse. But you got to remember that India is a country of 1.4 billion people, and which segment of the Indian, population has gone towards that particular experiences. So, what you are saying is right in a way, but what I would say is that the die is already cast. The, the journey has begun. Now, whether it takes, 10 years, 20 years, 40 years down the road, nobody can say in what form and shape it will happen. But there is a massive new investment cycle which is currently underway. And so, folks, in closing, well, design your own metaverse in what you feel comfortable with. Build in the elements of storytelling using the four P's and the four, points for immersion, and enjoy life as it comes.
Thank you so much for such a detailed and insightful answer, because I think it's important and imperative to change with changing times. And times are revolutionary at this point in time, and it transforming how things were changed when phones came into our lives, when social media or internet came into our lives. So I think this is a new storm of a different kind of revolution which is coming, and it's our mindfulness and our thought process has to be in place, where and how to draw lines and set boundaries to make the most of this opportunity that is standing in front of us right now. uh,
And in closing, all I would say is that you see that is why it is important to be part of a community like VRAR Association, because that is where you come across what is happening all over the world. Because at the moment, the whole ecosystem is a bit like the Wild West. Nobody really understands or knows what exactly is happening. So with that,
Great.
again, sorry for interrupting, Priyanka, and back to
No
you.
problem, sir. No problem. So, see, guys, there are certain questions regarding the GeoGlass Developers Program. I will just write, give you a quick direction that we have shared a form. Please fill it up there, or there's going to be an email ID which is called developer@tesseract.in. Please leave in your query and we'll try to touch base with you immediately. Regarding a question about signing up and being a member of VRARA Mumbai chapter, Makrand, we will reach out to you separately and tell you and explain you the whole process. We are really excited to onboard, new members to our community, and we can tell you through how you can do that in person on a phone call. And regarding which seminars are happening from VRAR Mumbai chapter, we are going to be conducting at least one event every month on second Saturday.
Thank you very much, Samir, for taking the time out to share the insights.
It's my pleasure. My
And
pleasure.
lastly,
So,
I would absolutely like to thank everybody for taking the time out to join in, but that is not last, but in fact, the top of the list.
yes,
But
thank you everyone for taking out time on a Saturday to attend this.
Absolutely, absolutely. I like it's a thing of storm, so I just don't want to be sounding repetitive, but I definitely want to thank Pradeep for all your support that you make, and Sameer, and definitely the people who have joined on a Saturday morning with us. It has been a wonderful time, and we will definitely get back to you with all your answers respect to developers program, and stay connected with us, and we'll speak to you again next weekend.